The rain hammered against the palace windows as Captain Marcus Chen stood at his post, his eyes scanning the dimly lit courtyard below. For 15 years he had served as a royal guard, protecting the royal family with unwavering dedication. His uniform was crisp, his posture perfect, but inside, his mind was racing with thoughts that had nothing to do with his duty tonight. Marcus had grown up in the poorest district of the city, where survival meant keeping your head down and your mouth shut. The Serpent Syndicate controlled everything there. They ran the gambling dens, the drug trade, and the protection rackets that squeezed every last coin from desperate families. His own father had been one of their victims, beaten so badly for missing a payment that he never walked properly again. Young Marcus had watched helplessly as his mother sold everything they owned to pay off debts that seemed to multiply like weeds, but Marcus had escaped that life. He joined the military at 18, worked harder than anyone else, and eventually earned a position in the Royal Guard. It was the highest honor a commoner could achieve, and he wore his badge with pride. The palace became his sanctuary, a world away from the darkness of his childhood. Here, everything was order, discipline, and honor. Tonight was different, though. 3 days ago, Marcus had received a letter slipped under his apartment door. No return address, no signature. Just a photograph of his younger sister, Alina, standing outside her school. The message was clear without words. The Serpent Syndicate had not forgotten the Chin family. They never forgot anyone who owed them money, and apparently, his father's old debt had been passed down like a cursed inheritance. The next morning, Marcus found another note. This one had words written in neat handwriting that somehow made the threat more terrifying. They wanted him to do something simple. During the upcoming royal banquet, he was to ensure that the east entrance remained unguarded for exactly 10 minutes. That was all. 10 minutes, and his sister would be safe. The debt would be cleared. He could go back to his peaceful life. Marcus crumpled the note in his fist. He knew what those 10 minutes meant. The Serpent Syndicate was planning something at the banquet, something that required access to the palace. It could be theft, kidnapping, or worse. The royal family trusted him completely. Princess Catherine had known him since she was a child. She would smile at him in the hallways and ask about his day. The young prince often joked with him about football matches. They were not just his employers. They had become like family to him. But Alina was his actual family. His baby sister, who wanted to become a doctor. She studied late into every night, determined to make something of herself, just as Marcus had done. She was innocent, pure, untouched by the darkness that had consumed their childhood neighborhood. The thought of the syndicate taking her, hurting her, made Marcus feel physically sick. He tried to think of alternatives. He could go to the police, but everyone knew the Serpent Syndicate had officers on their payroll. He could warn his commanding officer, but without proof he would sound paranoid. And the moment he made any move against them, Alina would disappear. The syndicate had eyes everywhere, informants in every corner of the city. Marcus spent his off-duty hours researching everything he could about the Serpent Syndicate. He visited the old neighborhood, talking to people who whispered about the organization in fearful voices. What he learned chilled him to the bone. The syndicate was not just a local gang. They were an international criminal empire that had existed for over 50 years. They trafficked weapons, people, and secrets. They had toppled governments and corrupted entire police forces. The leader was a man known only as the Viper. Nobody had ever seen his face and lived to describe it. He operated from the shadows, using fear and violence to maintain absolute control. Those who crossed him did not just die. They disappeared so completely that even their families stopped looking for them after a while. One evening, Marcus sat in a small cafe across from his sister's school. He watched Alina walk out with her friends, laughing about something, her backpack heavy with textbooks. She looked so happy, so full of dreams. How could he destroy that? How could he let these monsters anywhere near her? But how could he betray everything he had sworn to protect? The royal family represented hope for millions of people. They were symbols of stability in an uncertain world. If something happened to them because of him, Marcus would never forgive himself. The guilt would eat him alive. As he sipped his coffee, Marcus noticed a black car parked down the street. The same car had been there yesterday. Two men sat inside watching Elena's school. They wanted him to know they were watching. They wanted him to feel the pressure, to understand that there was no escape. That night, Marcus could not sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind spinning through impossible scenarios. Every solution led to disaster. If he refused the syndicate's demand, Elena would suffer. If he complied, innocent people might die, and he would become the very thing he had spent his life fighting against. He would become a traitor, a criminal, just another person corrupted by the Serpent Syndicate's poison. The banquet was in 4 days. For days to make an impossible choice, for days to find a way out of a trap that seemed to have no exit. Marcus walked through the palace gardens, his boots crunching on the gravel path. The morning sun was bright, but he felt cold inside. 3 days until the banquet. 3 days to decide between duty and family. He had barely eaten in days. And the other guards had started noticing his distraction. He found himself standing near the palace library, a place he often came to think. Through the window, he could see Princess Catherine reading at a large oak table. She was 23, brilliant, and genuinely cared about the people of the kingdom. Just last month, she had visited the poor districts and promised reforms to help families like his own. She represented real hope for change. Marcus felt his phone buzz. Another message. Another photo of Elena, this time closer, taken that very morning. The message read simply, 3 days. Don't forget. His hands trembled with rage. He wanted to throw the phone, to scream, to fight someone. But he was trapped in a cage of his own helplessness. Then something occurred to him. What if he could turn the tables? What if instead of being a victim, he became the hunter? That afternoon, Marcus requested a meeting with his commanding officer, Colonel Stewart. The colonel was a stern man in his 60s, a veteran of 2 wars who had trained Marcus personally. Marcus trusted him more than anyone else in the guard. Sir, I need to discuss a security concern, Marcus began carefully. Colonel Stewart looked up from his paperwork. Go ahead, Captain. Marcus took a deep breath. He could not reveal everything, but he could plant seeds. I've been hearing rumors in the city. Talk about potential threats to the royal family during the banquet. The colonel's expression sharpened. What kind of threats? From whom? I'm not certain yet, sir. But I think we should increase security at all entrances, especially the east entrance. Perhaps assign double guards to every post? Do you have specific intelligence, Captain? Because you know we can't change security protocols based on rumors. Felt his plan crumbling. He needed something more concrete, but he could not reveal the truth without endangering Elena. Just a feeling, sir. My instincts. Colonel Stewart studied him for a long moment. You've never been the type to rely on feelings, Marcus. What's really going on? Marcus wanted to tell him everything. The words were right there, begging to escape. But he thought of Elena, of those men in the black car, and he swallowed the truth back down. Nothing, sir. Perhaps I'm just being overly cautious. That evening, Marcus did something he had never done before. He went to the old neighborhood, to the very street where the Serpent Syndicate operated. He walked into a bar that everyone knew belonged to them, a place where deals were made and orders were given. The moment he entered, conversation stopped. Men at various tables looked up, recognizing his face even though he wore civilian clothes. A royal guard walking into Syndicate territory was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. A large man approached him. You lost, palace boy. I need to speak with someone in charge, Marcus said, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. Is that right? And why would anyone want to talk to you? Because I have information about the banquet. Information they'll want to hear. The man studied him, then nodded toward a back room. Marcus followed, aware that he might be walking to his death. The back room was dimly lit, smoke hanging in the air. A woman sat behind a desk, her face hidden in shadow. You're Marcus Chen, she said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. You received our messages. I did, and I'm here to make a counteroffer. As the woman laughed. A cold sound. You think you're in a position to negotiate? I think you need me more than I need you, Marcus lied. Without me, your plan fails. With me, it succeeds. That gives me leverage. Your sister gives us leverage. Touch her, and I'll make sure every guard at that palace knows something's coming. I'll lock down the entire building. Your operation will fail, and you'll have nothing but a dead royal guard who became useless to you. The silence stretched. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears.
What do you want?
The woman finally asked, I want to know the plan, all of it. Who's coming, what they're taking, when they're leaving. And I want my sister protected permanently. Her debt erased, her name removed from your records. In exchange, I'll give you your 10 minutes. But only if I know she's safe first. The woman leaned forward, and Marcus could finally see her face. She was younger than he expected, with cold eyes that had seen too much darkness. You're either very clever or very foolish, Captain Chen. Maybe both. The Viper doesn't like complications. The Viper doesn't like failed operations either. I'm offering you a guarantee of success. Another long silence. Then the woman picked up a phone and spoke quietly in a language Marcus did not understand. She listened to the response, then hung up. You have 24 hours to prove you're serious. Tomorrow night, you'll receive a package at your apartment. Inside will be a phone. When it rings, you'll answer, and you'll speak directly to the Viper. He'll decide if your counteroffer is acceptable. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He had just walked into the dragon's den and somehow walked out alive. But he had also put himself even deeper into the syndicate's web. As he left the bar, Marcus realized what he had done. He had not chosen family over duty, or duty over family. He had chosen to fight. He did not know if his plan would work, if he could somehow protect both Alina and the royal family. But he knew one thing for certain. He was done being a victim. The Serpent Syndicate had terrorized people like him for decades, hiding in shadows, ruling through fear. But Marcus had spent 15 years learning discipline, strategy, and combat. He had trained to protect, to serve, to sacrifice. Now he would use every skill he had learned, not just to defend the palace, but to strike back at the empire of darkness that had haunted his entire life. The royal guard, who had once been a helpless child in the slums, was about to become the syndicate's worst. Nightmare tomorrow. He would speak with the Viper, and somehow he would find a way to destroy them all. The package arrived exactly as promised. Marcus found it outside his apartment door the next evening, a plain brown box with no markings. Inside was a phone, sleek and black, along with a single note, midnight. Marcus spent the hours until then preparing. He set up a recording device connected to the phone, hidden where nobody would find it. He also wrote a detailed letter explaining everything, sealed it, and placed it in a safety deposit box at the bank. If something happened to him, the truth would come out. At midnight, precisely, the phone rang. Marcus answered, his voice calm despite his nerves. This is Marcus Chen, Captain Chen. The voice on the other end was smooth, almost pleasant, like a businessman discussing a merger. I understand you wish to negotiate. I want my sister protected permanently. And in exchange, you'll provide access to the palace during the banquet. After I see proof that Alina is safe. The Viper chuckled. You don't trust us? How disappointing. You've built your empire on fear and violence. Trust isn't exactly your currency. It's true, but neither is sentiment mine. Your sister is leverage. Nothing more. However, I admire your courage in coming to us directly. That shows initiative. I'm not interested in compliments. I want a deal. Very well. Here's what will happen. Tomorrow, your sister will be taken to a safe location. You'll receive her location and confirmation that she's unharmed. During the banquet, you'll ensure the east entrance is unguarded from exactly 9:15 to 9:25. 10 minutes. Our people will enter, complete their business, and leave. Once we're clear, your sister will be released, and the Chen family debt will be permanently erased from our books. What's the business? What are you planning? That's not your concern. If you're planning to hurt the royal family, I can't allow it. Can't allow it? The Viper's voice turned cold. Captain, you seem to misunderstand your position. You're not in control here. Neither are you, Marcus shot back. Not without me. So, tell me the plan, or I'll make sure security is so tight that a mouse couldn't get into that banquet. The silence stretched for almost a minute. Marcus held his breath, wondering if he had pushed too far. We're taking something, the Viper finally said. Not someone. There's an item in the palace vault that belongs to us. It was stolen from our organization 30 years ago, and we want it back. What item? A ledger. It contains records of transactions, names, connections, information that could expose our entire network if it fell into the wrong hands. King Edward's father took it during a raid on our operations decades ago. It's been locked in the royal vault ever since. Insurance against us. We've tried legal channels, bribery, everything. Nothing has worked. So now, we take it by force. Marcus processed this information. A ledger. Not an assassination, not a kidnapping, just theft. But if that ledger contained what the Viper claimed, it could expose corruption at every level of government and business. It could also be the key to destroying the syndicate entirely. How do I know you'll keep your word about Alina? You don't. Consider this, Captain. If we wanted to hurt your sister, we would have done so already. She's only valuable to us as leverage over you. Once we have the ledger, that leverage becomes unnecessary. We'll have no reason to harm her. It was twisted logic, but it made sense in its own dark way. The syndicate operated on self-interest, not cruelty for its own sake. I'll need proof of life every day until the banquet, Marcus said. Agreed. You'll receive photos and videos daily. Now, do we have a deal? Marcus thought of Princess Catherine, of the young prince, of Colonel Stewart, and all the guards who trusted him. Then he thought of Alina, innocent and undeserving of this nightmare. But most of all, he thought of the ledger, sitting in a vault, containing the secrets that could bring down the most dangerous criminal organization in history. An idea began forming in his mind. A dangerous, almost impossible idea. We have a deal, he said. The next morning, Marcus received a video of Alina. She was in a comfortable-looking room reading a book. She looked confused but unharmed. A voice off-camera asked her to state the date and time, which she did. The video was recent, real. Marcus immediately went to work on his plan. He started by visiting the palace vault under the pretense of a security check. The vault was in the basement, protected by multiple layers of security. Getting to the ledger would require bypassing guards, cameras, and a combination lock that only 3 people knew. He spent his lunch break at an internet cafe, researching everything he could about the Serpent Syndicate. He discovered old news articles about the raid the Viper had mentioned. 30 years ago, a joint police and military operation had raided a syndicate warehouse. They had seized weapons, drugs, and documents. One of those documents had been a ledger. And it had been King Edward's father, then the Crown Prince, who had personally ensured it went to the royal vault rather than police evidence. That evening, Marcus did something reckless. He broke into the palace vault. He used his security clearance to access the basement, then disabled cameras using codes he had memorized over years of duty. The combination lock was trickier, but Marcus had watched the head of security open it enough times to notice patterns. After 20 minutes of careful work, the vault door swung open. Inside were treasures beyond imagination. Crown jewels, ancient artifacts, important documents. And in a corner, in a sealed metal box, he found it. The ledger. Marcus photographed every single page with his phone. Hundreds of pages containing names, dates, transactions, payoffs. He recognized politicians, judges, police chiefs, business leaders. The corruption went deeper than he had imagined. The Serpent Syndicate had not just infiltrated society, they had woven themselves into its very fabric. But Marcus also found something else. Evidence of crimes that went beyond financial corruption, human trafficking routes, murder for hire services, weapons deals with terrorist organizations. This ledger was not just a record of white-collar crimes. It was a map to an empire of human suffering. He carefully returned the ledger to its place and sealed the vault. As he left, he knew he had crossed a line. He had violated his oath, broken into the vault, and stolen information. But he had also found the key to destroying the syndicate forever. The next day, Marcus made copies of all the photos. He encrypted them and uploaded them to a secure server. Then he arranged a meeting with someone he had never thought he would contact. An investigative journalist named Sarah Martinez is known for exposing corruption despite threats to her life. They met in a crowded marketplace where they could talk without being overheard. Marcus gave her a USB drive containing portions of the ledger information. "This is from the Serpent Syndicate's records," he explained quietly. "But you can't publish anything until after the royal banquet in 2 days? Lives depend on the timing." Sarah's eyes widened as she looked through the files. "This is incredible. This could bring down dozens of powerful people. How did you get this?" "That's not important. What matters is that you're ready to release it the moment I give you the signal. Can you do that?" Sarah Martinez studied Marcus carefully. She had built her career on exposing corruption, and she knew danger when she saw it. This royal guard sitting across from her was risking everything. "I can have a team ready to publish within hours of your signal," she said. "But I need to know what I'm walking into." "Are you in danger?" "We all are," Marcus replied. "The Serpent Syndicate has existed for 50 years because they operate in shadows. This ledger exposes them to sunlight. Once you publish this, there's no going back. People will go to prison. Others will run. Some will fight back. What about you? What happens to you when this comes out?" Marcus had asked himself the same question many times. "I'll probably lose my position. Maybe face charges for unauthorized access to the vault. But if it means stopping them, it's worth it." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You're a good man, Captain Chen. I'll be ready when you give the word." As Marcus walked back to the palace, he felt the weight of what he had set in motion. In 24 hours, the banquet would begin. The syndicate would make their move, and Marcus would spring his trap. That evening, he received another video of Alina. She was eating dinner, still looking confused but healthy. The person filming asked her to wave at the camera, and she did, adding a small smile. Marcus felt his resolve strengthen. He would save her. He would save everyone. The morning of the banquet arrived, cold and gray. Marcus put on his dress uniform, the medals on his chest reflecting years of dedicated service. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. The idealistic young recruit who had joined the guard 15 years ago would never have imagined breaking into the royal vault, dealing with criminals, or planning what was essentially a counter-operation against one of the world's most dangerous organizations. But that young recruit had never faced an impossible choice. He had never watched his sister's life hang in the balance. He had never held the power to destroy evil in his hands. At the palace, preparations for the banquet were in full swing. Chefs prepared elaborate meals. Decorators hung flowers and banners. Security teams reviewed protocols. Marcus walked through it all, his mind elsewhere, calculating timing and scenarios. Colonel Stewart pulled him aside. "Captain, are you well? You've seemed distracted these past few days." "I'm fine, sir. Just want everything to be perfect tonight." The colonel studied him with knowing eyes. "Whatever's troubling you, Marcus, remember that you don't have to face it alone. That's what brotherhood means." Marcus felt emotion well up in his throat. After tonight, he might never wear this uniform again. He might lose everything he had built, but he would do it knowing he had tried to save something greater than himself. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." As evening approached, guests began arriving. Politicians, diplomats, business leaders, all dressed in their finest. The palace glowed with light and music. Marcus took his position near the east entrance, the very place he had been ordered to leave unguarded. At 9 o'clock, he received a text message. "Your sister is safe at this location." An address followed, somewhere in the industrial district. "Fulfill your end, and she stays that way," Marcus texted back. "Show me live proof." The video call came through. Alina appeared on screen, sitting in a car. "Marcus, what's happening?" "These people said you sent them to protect me." "It's okay, Alina. Just stay calm. Do exactly what they tell you for the next hour, and this will all be over." I'm scared, I know. But I promise you, by tomorrow, you'll be safe. Trust me. The call ended. Marcus checked his watch. 9:10. 5 minutes until the syndicate would expect their window. He looked around the corridor. 2 other guards were stationed nearby. He needed them away from the east entrance without raising suspicion. Wilson Rodriguez, he called to them. I just saw someone suspicious near the south garden. Check it out, would you? The guards looked at each other, then headed toward the garden. Marcus watched them go, guilt twisting in his stomach. He was sending them away, leaving the entrance exposed, just as the syndicate demanded. But what they didn't know was that Marcus had prepared his own surprise. At 9:14, Marcus stepped away from the east entrance. To anyone watching, it appeared he was doing exactly what the Viper had ordered. The entrance was unguarded. At 9:15, 3 figures in catering uniforms approached the east entrance. They moved with the confidence of people who believed their path was clear. They entered through the door, heading straight for the basement where the vault waited. What they didn't see was Marcus following them from a distance. What they didn't know was that he had spent the previous night modifying the vault's security system. He had set up cameras in hidden locations recording everything. He had also reprogrammed the vault's lock to send an alert to his phone the moment anyone attempted to open it. The 3 figures reached the vault. One of them, a tall man with cold eyes, pulled out a device to crack the combination. Marcus recognized him from his research. Viktor Krasnov, one of the Viper's top enforcers, responsible for at least a dozen murders. Marcus's phone buzzed. The vault alert. It was time. He pressed a button on a small device in his pocket. Throughout the palace, silent alarms began flashing on security monitors. Not the public alarms that would cause panic among guests, but internal alerts that would bring every guard rushing to the basement. Then Marcus stepped out of the shadows. That's far enough, Krasnov. The 3 figures spun around, hands reaching for weapons. But Marcus had his service pistol already drawn. Don't move. You're surrounded. Krasnov's eyes narrowed. You're the palace guard, Chen. You were supposed to give us clear access. I gave you enough access to incriminate yourselves completely. The sound of boots echoed through the corridor. Dozens of guards appeared, weapons ready, surrounding the 3 intruders. Colonel Stewart was among them, his face a mask of controlled fury. Captain Chen, what is the meaning of this? Sir, these men are members of the Serpent Syndicate. They came here to steal evidence from the Royal Vault. I let them in to catch them in the act. You let them in? You compromised palace security? I had no choice, sir. They were holding my sister hostage. Krasnov laughed bitterly. You fool! You think catching 3 operatives matters? The Viper has hundreds more. Your sister is still in our custody. We'll kill her the moment we don't report back. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call. Sarah, send it. Send everything. Across the city, Sarah Martinez pressed a button. The story went live on her news website. Within seconds, it spread to social media, to other news outlets, to television stations. The contents of the ledger, names and crimes laid bare for the world to see. Marcus looked at Krasnov. In about 5 minutes, every corrupt official you work with will be scrambling to save themselves. Every dirty cop will be exposed. Your organization's protection will crumble. The Viper's empire is falling apart as we speak. Krasnov's confident expression faltered. He pulled out his phone and saw the news spreading like wildfire. His face went pale. You've destroyed us, he whispered. Marcus said firmly. You destroyed yourselves decades ago. I just made sure everyone could see it. The basement of the palace erupted into controlled chaos. Guards secured the 3 syndicate operatives while Colonel Stewart barked orders into his radio. Above them, the banquet continued, guests unaware of the drama unfolding below their feet. Marcus's phone rang. An unknown number. He answered, knowing exactly who it would be. You've made a terrible mistake, Captain Chen. The Viper's smooth voice had lost its pleasant tone. Now it was pure ice. The only mistake was yours, Marcus replied. You thought I was just another victim you could control. Your sister will pay for your betrayal. she won't. Because right now, every law enforcement agency in the country is using that ledger to track your operations. They know about your safe houses, your routes, your people. The address where you're holding Alina is already surrounded by police. She'll be free within the hour. You're bluffing, am I? Check your communications. How many of your people are reporting in? How many are running? Your empire is collapsing, Viper. You built it in darkness, and I just turned on every light. The line went dead. Marcus exhaled slowly, his hands shaking with adrenaline. Colonel Stewart approached him, his expression unreadable. Captain Chen, you're under arrest for unauthorized access to the royal vault, compromising palace security, and conspiracy with known criminals. Marcus nodded and held out his wrists for handcuffs. I understand, sir. However, the colonel continued, not reaching for handcuffs. You're also apparently responsible for exposing the largest criminal organization in our nation's history. So we're going to have a very long conversation about exactly what happened here. They moved to a secure room away from the detained operatives. Marcus told the colonel everything. The threats against Alina, his infiltration of the syndicate's bar, his theft of the ledger information, his coordination with the journalist. He left nothing out. Colonel Stewart listened in silence, his weathered face showing a mix of anger, admiration, and concern. When Marcus finished, the colonel leaned back in his chair. You should have come to me immediately when they first threatened your sister. They would have killed her, sir. They have informants everywhere. Had informants everywhere, the colonel corrected. According to the news reports, arrests are happening across the city. Judges, police officers, politicians. The corruption ran deeper than anyone suspected. That's why I couldn't risk it. I didn't know who to trust. Could have trusted me, Marcus. But I understand why you didn't. In your position, I might have made the same choice. The colonel stood and walked to the window. What you did was illegal. You violated your oath, broke into the vault, and endangered everyone in this palace. Yes, sir. You also saved your sister. Protected the royal family from a criminal organization, and dealt a devastating blow to the Serpent Syndicate. Your actions will likely save countless lives. Marcus remained silent, unsure where this was heading. The king will need to make the final decision about your fate, Colonel Stewart said. But I'll recommend leniency. What you did was wrong, but your intentions were honorable. That counts for something. An hour later, Marcus received confirmation that Alina had been rescued. Police had raided the location where she was being held, arresting her captors without incident. The syndicate operatives had surrendered immediately. Knowing their organization was finished, Marcus was allowed to video call his sister. Alina appeared on screen, wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by police officers. Marcus. What's happening? The police said you saved me. They said you took down some kind of criminal empire. It's complicated, Alina, but you're safe now. That's all that matters. Did you really break into the palace vault? Who told you that? It's all over the news. They're calling you a hero and a criminal at the same time. Marcus laughed despite himself. Yeah, that sounds about right. Are you in trouble? Probably. But I do it all again to keep you safe. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You're the best brother anyone could have. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. The next morning, Marcus was summoned to meet with King Edward himself. He was escorted through the palace to the king's private study. Still wearing his uniform, but with his badge and weapon confiscated, King Edward was a man in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that had seen decades of political maneuvering. He gestured for Marcus to sit. Captain Chen, you've created quite a situation. Yes, Your Majesty. I take full responsibility for my actions. Do you know why my father kept that ledger in our vault? I assume as insurance against the syndicate. Partly. But also because he knew that exposing it would cause chaos. Governments could fall. The economy could suffer. Innocent people connected to the guilty might be harmed. It was a weapon too dangerous to use. With respect, Your Majesty, it was a weapon too dangerous not to use. The syndicate has operated freely for 50 years because of fear and corruption. How many people have suffered because we kept their secrets locked away? The king was quiet for a long moment. My father used to say that ruling sometimes means making impossible choices. choosing between the lesser of evils. You understand that now, don't you? Yes, Your Majesty. You chose to break your oath to save your sister and stop the syndicate. It was illegal, reckless, and exactly what I would have hoped one of my guards would do in such circumstances. Marcus looked up in surprise. I cannot publicly condone what you did, the king continued. You'll need to face consequences. But privately, I'm grateful. That ledger has haunted my family for 30 years. You've freed us from its burden and dealt a blow to evil that my father could never manage. What will happen to me? You'll be dismissed from the royal guard. There's no way around that. But there will be no criminal charges. Instead, I'm offering you a different position. The exposure of the syndicate's corruption means we need to rebuild trust in our institutions. I'm creating a special task force to root out remaining criminal elements and restore integrity to our government. I want you to lead it. Marcus stared at the king, unable to process what he was hearing. Your Majesty, I broke into your vault. I violated every protocol. You also showed courage, initiative, and a willingness to sacrifice everything for what's right. Those are exactly the qualities I need in someone leading this effort. The people need to see that we're serious about change. Who better to lead that change than the man who risked everything to expose corruption? I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need. But know this, Captain Chen. What you started last night cannot be undone. The syndicate is wounded but not destroyed. They'll try to rebuild, to adapt. We need people like you to ensure they never regain their power. Marcus left the meeting with his head spinning. He had expected punishment, possibly prison. Instead, he had been offered a position that could shape the future of the entire nation. Over the next few days, the fallout from the ledger's exposure dominated every news channel. Over 200 arrests were made across the country. Police chiefs, judges, business executives, and politicians all fell as the web of corruption was unraveled. Some fled the country. Others attempted to destroy evidence. But the damage was done. The Serpent Syndicate's network was exposed and collapsing. Sarah Martinez won awards for her reporting. She credited an anonymous source, never revealing Marcus's identity as the person who provided the information. Her articles detailed decades of criminal activity, human trafficking operations shut down, and victims finally able to come forward without fear. Marcus visited Alina at her university. She had returned to her studies, though she admitted having nightmares about her captivity. They sat together in a campus coffee shop, talking about everything that had happened. Are you going to take the king's offer? Alina asked. I don't know. Part of me just wants to disappear, live a quiet life. Asterisk, that's not who you are, Marcus. You've spent your whole life fighting for what's right. This is your chance to do it on a bigger scale. What if I fail? What if the syndicate comes back stronger? Then you'll fight them again. That's what heroes do. Marcus smiled sadly. I'm not a hero, Alina. I'm just someone who made a difficult choice. You saved me. You saved countless other people. If that's not heroic, I don't know what is. 3 weeks after the banquet, Marcus made his decision. He accepted the king's offer. The new task force was announced publicly, with Marcus Chen named as its director. The press called him the guard who stunned the world. Some praised him as a hero. Others criticized him for breaking his oath and violating protocol. Marcus ignored both the praise and criticism. He focused on building his team, recruiting people he trusted, developing strategies to dismantle what remained of the syndicate's operations. But he also knew that the Viper was still out there. The mysterious leader had never been captured, never identified. The ledger contained information about the organization, but nothing about its true head. The Viper remained a shadow, and shadows had a way of growing back. One evening, Marcus received an encrypted email at his new office. No sender information, no subject line. It's just a message. You won a battle, Captain Chen. But the war is far from over. I will rebuild what you destroyed. And when I do, I'll remember the man who dared to challenge me. Sleep well while you can. Sincerely, the Viper. Marcus deleted the email but couldn't forget its words. The Viper was right. This was just the beginning. The syndicate had existed for 50 years because it was adaptable, resilient, patient. Cutting off one head would only make it grow another. But Marcus was patient too. He had learned from his experience that fighting evil required more than just courage. It required strategy, sacrifice, and the willingness to make impossible choices. He had allies now, resources, and most importantly, he had taken away the Syndicate's greatest weapon, their invisibility. As he looked out over the city from his office window, Marcus thought about all the families like his own who had suffered under the Syndicate's control. All the people who had lived in fear, unable to escape the cycle of poverty and violence that criminal organizations created. Couldn't save everyone, couldn't undo decades of damage overnight, but he could fight. He could build something better. And maybe, just maybe, he could ensure that no other child would grow up watching their father beaten for debts, their family destroyed by the machinery of organized crime. The Royal Guard had become something more. He was now a symbol of resistance against corruption, a reminder that even the most powerful criminal empires could be challenged. The road ahead would be long and dangerous. The Viper would strike back. Other criminals would rise to fill the power vacuum. But Marcus Chen was ready. He had faced his worst fear and survived. He had made the impossible choice and found a way to protect both duty and family. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same determination that had brought him this far. 6 months passed like a storm that refused to settle. Marcus threw himself into his work with the task force, barely sleeping as he coordinated raids, interviewed witnesses, and built cases against the remnants of the Serpent Syndicate's network. Every day brought new discoveries about how deep the corruption had spread. His team had grown to 30 skilled investigators, former military personnel, and reformed criminals who wanted to make amends. They worked from a secure facility outside the city, away from prying eyes and potential infiltrators. Trust was their most precious commodity and their most fragile one. Alina visited him often, bringing home-cooked meals and forcing him to take breaks. She had changed since her ordeal. The carefree student had been replaced by someone more serious, more aware of the darkness that existed in the world. She had switched her major from medicine to criminal justice, determined to fight alongside her brother in her own way. "You're working yourself to death," she told him one evening, setting down a container of soup on his cluttered desk. "There's too much to do. We've identified 17 remaining cells operating across the country. Every day we delay, they recruit new members, establish new operations. Every day you don't rest, you get weaker. You're no good to anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." Marcus knew she was right, but stopping felt impossible. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him constantly. Every victim who came forward, every survivor who shared their story with his team, reminded him why this work mattered. The biggest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Viktor Krasnov, the enforcer they had captured at the palace, agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He had spent months in prison watching his organization crumble, seeing colleagues abandon ship, and realizing that loyalty to the Syndicate had been a one-way street. "I'll tell you everything I know," Krasnov said during their first interview. "But you need to understand something. The Viper isn't one person." Marcus leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "It's a title. A role. There have been 3 different Vipers over the past 50 years. When one dies or retires, another takes their place. The person you're hunting now, the current Viper, has only held the position for 10 years. Who is it? I never met them face to face. None of us did. The Viper operates through intermediaries, encrypted communications, dead drops. But I know someone who might have the answer. There's a woman named Katerina Volkov. She was the previous Viper's right hand before she retired 5 years ago. If anyone knows the current Viper's identity, it's her." Finding Katerina Volkov became Marcus's obsession. His team tracked her movements across 3 countries, before finally locating her in a small coastal town, living under an assumed name as a bookshop owner. She was in her 60s, elegant and sharp-eyed, with the bearing of someone who had commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Marcus approached her alone. Believing that a show of force would only make her defensive, he walked into her bookshop on a quiet afternoon, the bell above the door chiming softly. Katerina looked up from behind the counter and smiled knowingly. "Marcus Chen, I wondered when you would find me. You know who I am? Of course. The royal guard who brought down the syndicate? Your face has been all over the news. Though I must say, you look more tired in person. I need information about the Viper. I'm just a retired bookshop owner. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus pulled out a folder and placed it on the counter. This contains evidence of your involvement in the syndicate's operations. Enough to put you in prison for the rest of your life. Or you could help me, and I'll make sure that evidence disappears. Katerina opened the folder and flipped through the pages without emotion. Blackmail. How disappointingly conventional. I prefer to call it negotiation. She closed the folder and studied him carefully. Why should I help you destroy something I helped build? Because you got out. You retired. You chose a different life. That means some part of you wanted to leave the darkness behind, or it means I got old and smart enough to know when to quit. Either way, you're out. But there are thousands of people still trapped in the syndicate's web. Victims who deserve justice. You can help them. Katerina was silent for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the counter. Finally, she sighed. The current Viper is someone you would never suspect. Someone who has been hiding in plain sight, protected by the very systems meant to stop them. Who? Her name is Diana Blackwood. She's a judge on the High Court. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Judge Diana Blackwood was one of the most respected legal minds in the country. She had presided over corruption cases, organized crime trials, and was known for her harsh sentences against criminals. She had even been mentioned as a possible candidate for Chief Justice. That's impossible. Judge Blackwood has sent dozens of criminals to prison. Yes, she has. All of them either rivals to the syndicate or members who became liabilities. She's been protecting the organization while appearing to fight it. It's brilliant, really. Nobody would ever suspect a judge who built her career on fighting organized crime to actually be running one. How do I prove it? You don't. That's why she's still free. Diana is meticulous. She leaves no evidence, uses no traceable communications. Everything goes through layers of intermediaries. The only reason I know is because I personally handed control to her 10 years ago. Marcus felt frustration building. So you're telling me the head of the syndicate is untouchable? I'm telling you that going after her directly will fail. She has allies in every branch of government, security measures you can't imagine, and the legal knowledge to outmaneuver any prosecution. If you try to arrest her without absolute proof, she'll destroy you. Then what do? Katerina smiled. You do what you did at the palace. You create a situation where she has no choice but to expose herself. Over the next 2 months, Marcus and his team executed Katerina's plan. They began dismantling the syndicate's operations one by one, but they did it in a specific pattern. Every raid, every arrest was designed to push Judge Blackwood into a corner, to force her to act personally instead of through intermediaries. They arrested her financial managers, shut down her money laundering operations, and seized assets that she needed to maintain control. With each action, the pressure increased. The remaining syndicate members began panicking, demanding leadership, demanding solutions. And Judge Blackwood had no choice but to step out of the shadows to keep her empire from completely collapsing. The trap was set at a warehouse, where the syndicate was planning to move a shipment of illegal weapons. Marcus's team had leaked information about the raid, but with deliberate errors that would make it seem like they didn't know Judge Blackwood's connection. The goal was to make her feel safe enough to appear personally to salvage the operation. The night of the operation, Marcus positioned his team around the warehouse. Hidden cameras captured every angle. Undercover operatives posed as syndicate members. Everything was ready. At midnight, vehicles began arriving. Syndicate operatives moved weapons from trucks into the warehouse, working quickly and efficiently. Marcus watched from a van parked a block away, his eyes fixed on the video feeds. Then she arrived. A black sedan pulled up and Judge Diana Blackwood stepped out. She was in her 50s, wearing expensive clothes that spoke of wealth and power. Even here, in a criminal operation, she carried herself with authority. Marcus activated his microphone. All teams, hold position. Let her get inside. We need her on camera giving orders. Judge Blackwood entered the warehouse and immediately began directing operations. Her voice was clear and commanding as she told her people where to move the weapons, how to transport them, which routes to use. Every word was recorded, every gesture captured on video. Now, Marcus said, the task force moved in from all sides. Police vehicles surrounded the warehouse. Spotlights illuminated the building. Officers poured in with weapons drawn. The syndicate operatives tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within minutes, everyone was on the ground, hands behind their heads. Everyone except Judge Blackwood, who stood frozen in the center of the warehouse. Finally understanding that she had walked into a trap, Marcus approached her slowly. Judge Diana Blackwood, you're under arrest for organized crime, corruption, conspiracy to commit murder, and about 50 other charges we'll discuss at the station. She looked at him with cold fury. You have no idea what you've done. I have connections that will destroy you. My lawyers will have me out within hours. Your connections are already in custody or fleeing the country. And your lawyers can't help you when we have video evidence of you personally directing a weapons smuggling operation. The Viper has finally been exposed. For the first time, Marcus saw fear flicker across her face. She had spent a decade believing she was untouchable, protected by her position and her carefully constructed facade. Now that protection was gone. The arrest of Judge Blackwood sent shockwaves through the entire country. The revelation that a high court judge had secretly been running the Serpent Syndicate made headlines around the world. It validated everything Marcus had fought for and proved that corruption could exist at any level, hidden behind respectability and power. The trial lasted 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. Judge Blackwood was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Dozens of her associates received similar sentences. The Serpent Syndicate, which had terrorized the nation for 50 years, was finally and truly destroyed. Marcus stood in the courtroom as the verdict was read, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders that he had carried since childhood. The organization that had destroyed his father, threatened his sister, and caused immeasurable suffering was gone. Not just weakened or scattered, but completely dismantled. After the trial, the king held a ceremony honoring Marcus and his task force. Medals were awarded, speeches were given, and Marcus was officially recognized as a national hero. But the moment that mattered most to him came later, when he returned to his old neighborhood. The streets looked different now. Businesses that had been forced to pay protection money were flourishing. Families walked without fear. Children played in parks that had once been too dangerous to enter. The darkness that had hung over these streets for generations had been lifted. An elderly woman approached Marcus as he walked through the neighborhood. She grabbed his hand with trembling fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "My grandson can grow up safe now because of what you did." Marcus felt tears in his eyes. This was why he had risked everything. Not for medals or recognition, but for moments like this. For the chance to give people back their freedom and safety. Elena graduated from university with honors and joined the task force officially. She and Marcus worked together, continuing to root out organized crime and corruption. The work was never finished, would never be finished, but they faced it together. On the anniversary of the night at the palace, Marcus visited Colonel Stewart, who had retired but remained a mentor and friend. They sat in the colonel's garden, drinking tea and talking about everything that had happened. "Do you ever regret it?" the colonel asked. "The choice you made that night?" Marcus thought carefully before answering. "I regret the position I was put in. I regret that I had to break my oath and compromise my values. But I don't regret the outcome. Too many people suffered for too long because others chose to look away or felt powerless to act. You showed everyone that one person can make a difference. That's a powerful legacy. I just hope it inspires others to stand up when they see injustice. That's the real victory, not just stopping one criminal organization, but changing how people think about fighting corruption as the sun set over the city." Marcus reflected on his journey from a poor kid in the slums to a royal guard to the man who brought down one of history's most dangerous underworld mafias. It had been a path filled with impossible choices, dangerous risks, and moral compromises. But it had also been a path toward something better. The royal guard had stunned the world, not just through his actions on one night, but through his refusal to accept that evil was inevitable or unstoppable. He had proven that even the most entrenched corruption could be exposed, that even the most powerful criminals could be brought to justice. And in doing so, he had given hope to everyone who had ever felt powerless. Everyone who had ever wanted to fight back but didn't know how. Marcus Chin had become more than a hero. He had become a symbol that change was possible, that one person's courage could spark a movement, that even the darkest shadows could not withstand the light of truth. The Serpent Syndicate was gone, but the fight against injustice continued. And Marcus was ready for whatever came next, knowing that he had already achieved something remarkable. He had saved his sister, protected his country, and helped countless people reclaim their lives from fear. That was enough. That was everything.